Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Yud of Makkot. It is remarkable how quickly one makes progress when one does a little bit every day. That's the beauty of daf Yomi. So already 9 days into Makkos, we're more than a third of the way finished. Yeah, more than a third of the way finished. So this is really exciting. We Yesterday we learned at the end of the day we learned a Mishnah. Let me share my screen and we'll get really started. So the Mishnah that we concluded our learning together yesterday with noted the presence of the three cities of refuge on the eastern side of the Yarden, of the Jordan River, and another three on the western side. And so as we pick up with the Gemara on the seventh line from the bottom of Tedem Bet, the Gemara is going to now give us some additional details. So citing a brisa, the Gemara quotes a brisa that identifies and locates the six cities. So Tanrabanan, Shalosh Arim Hivdil Moshe Be'ever Yarden. Moshe set aside three cities on the eastern side of the Jordan, Ukenegdan Hivdil Yoshua Be'eretz Canaan, and opposite them on the western side of the Jordan, Yoshua set up three cities. Mechuvanos hayu kamin shtei shuros shivakerem, and they were aligned like two rows. If we look north-south, if we have north being the top of the page, then they were sort of like two columns next to each other. So you have, again, one column of cities to the right of the Jordan and one column to the left of the Jordan. All right. So what cities were they? Chevron, Biuda, Keneged, Betzer, Bamidbar. From the most south, Chevron was on the west side of the Yarden, and Betzer in the wilderness was on the right side. Shechem, Bahar Ephraim, Keneged, Ramot, Begilad. Shechem was opposite Ramot, and then Kedem, Bahar Naphtali, Keneged Golan Babashan. And so the Golan and the Kedesh were the two final cities. And so you end up with, again, a column from the bottom, Hebron, Shechem, Kedesh, and Betzer, Ramah, Golan. And so that's the situation. Vishilashta. And everything was divided. The country was effectively divided with three with three lines across. So each line, Hebron with Betzer was one line, Shechem with Ramah was one line, and Kedesh with Golan was another. And so Shiyu Mishulushin, so that they would divide with, create three dividing lines in the land, across the land of Israel. Shihem midarom lechevron, kemei Hebron l'Shechem. So from the very bottom of Eretz Yisrael to Shechem would be the distance of Shechem to Hebron. And then umechevron l'Shechem, kemei Shechem l'Kedesh. And then the distance from Shechem to Hebron was the same as the distance from Shechem to Kedesh. So all the distances would be the same. Umishchem leKedesh can be Kedesh l'Tzafon. And for the distance from Shechem to Kedesh, it was the same as Kedesh l'Tzafon. So again, we have the northern border, then Kedesh, then Shechem, then Hebron, and then the southern border. And every one of those distances, so we have four different gaps, and those four gaps would, what's it? Four gaps. We have those four gaps would be all equidistant. Okay, and we're going to ask about, well, that means that, somebody who's between Shechem and Hebron is going to have a shorter distance to travel than somebody who's at the very southern tip of Israel. In fact, everybody between Shechem and Hebron is going to have a shorter distance than somebody who is between who is at the very tip of the land of Israel. So we'll ask that question very shortly. So Be'ever Yarden, Tlas Yisrael Tlas. So one sec. So the Gemara begins by asking a classic question that that I think Rashi answers even in the Chumash, that I don't understand. Why are there three cities of refuge on the eastern side and on the western side? Meaning there are only 2.5 tribes on the eastern
Mhm.
side of the Jordan. So why in the world would you need the same number of cities of refuge as on the western side? So Amar Abaye b'Gilad shchiche rotzchem, that in Gilad murderers were more common. And Rashi explains b'Gilad, last line on Tedem Bet in the Rashi, near the end of the line, b'Gilad shehi be'ever hayardain shchichi rotzkim. They were in Gilad, which was on the other side of the Yarden. So as a result, that's why so as a result, even though Gilad itself is not one of the cities, but Gilad was a location where there were a lot of murderers. And so as a result, because there were a lot of murderers, so then you need to have a lot of cities of refuge. Now, if you're wondering, well, 1 second, how do the cities of refuge deal with actual murderers? Murderers don't really go to cities of refuge. So what's the story? So that's where Tosos comes in and helps us. Gilad shchichi rotzkim. In Gilad, lots of murderers were very common. And of course, this is really terrible to think about, that there would be a place where Jewish people would have a lot of murderers. But in any event, Perish. So what's the explanation? Meaning, how does this relate to the question of needing more cities of refuge? Here's why we needed additional cities of refuge. We're going to see at the end of today that that Hashem sets the world up so that if somebody kills somebody without witnesses, Hakadosh Baruch Hu mizamnein lepundak echad. Hashem invites, so quote in quotes, air quotes, invites that person who's killed without witnesses to come to an inn along with somebody who has killed somebody accidentally without witnesses. And so as a result, this person who killed accidentally without witnesses will be going down a ladder, and the person who killed somebody on purpose will be walking underneath the ladder, and the person who's climbing down the ladder will then fall on top of the person and kill the person who was the murderer who was walking underneath the ladder, because Hashem creates a world in which sort of justice in the end prevails. So Kida Amri and Lakaman, as we will see at the end of the day today. So that is Tosos's explanation as to why we need additional cities of refuge. There are obviously other explanations for why more murderers means more cities of refuge. It could be that if we're talking about, we say that at the very beginning, immediately they need to run to the city of refuge. So that could be a part of it. Could be that in a place where life is so valueless. I think this is sort of a theme that you see in many Western movies. By Western, I don't mean like American, I mean like classic old Western movies, that the life was so cheap that a lot of problems then ensue. So and so that could be also that people are less careful because there are so many murderers around. So therefore, they see no need to be careful, because they never know what tomorrow will bring. Okay, but
I have a question about their calculations to border.
Yes.
I don't know about the cities in the east, but we know the cities in the west, and Kavrom and Shechem are obvious. And Kadesh is actually on the Lebanese border. It's an archaeological site, and there really wasn't any Jewish settlement in biblical times north of that.
So either it must be a different Kadesh, or which is sort of like a classic answer, or
But the distance from Shechem is about right.
Oh, the distances are about right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't have a great answer. Now, of course, part of it may be right. I believe that it was Shevet Dan was supposed to be all the way up in the north, but they never ended up being up there. and they ended up. If I'm getting this right, I might be getting
I
myself
thought it
confused
was
with
the other
wrong
way
name.
around.
It was the other way around.
They moved up there.
They moved up there. All right, so that doesn't answer your question then. I was thinking that maybe that could answer your question. All right, so I don't have a great answer, but
Okay.
thank you for raising it because it highlights the fact that we do know where some of these cities are, and it does seem that it's not so simple. Do they actually line up in a line? I didn't go search
Yeah,
biblical
Steinsaltz actually
maps.
has a map, and it's accurate. It looks pretty accurate because Shechem and Hebron, of course, are big cities today.
Correct. So, all right. Well, the when we finished the bottom of Tenem Bet, we said that Abaye was saying that in Gilad murderers were common. So as we pick up on the top of Yuram and Aleph, he continues to explain how he knows that in Gilad this was the case. Diksiv Gilad Kiryat Poalei Aven Akuba Midam, that Gilad is a city of the wicked, of doers of evil, and filled with those who akubat midam. So what is my akuba midam? So I'm Rabbi Lazar. Shahayu okvin laharog nefashos. They would wait in ambush, in hiding, in order to kill people. And so the point is we see that's pretty much exactly what Abai said, that there are a lot of murderers there. Umayshna mehai gisa demarachake. So I don't understand. Again, this is the question that I touched on earlier. We just said that the distance from the northern border to Kedesh was equal to the distance from Kedesh to Shechem. But that means that if you're at the northern border, you have a long way to travel. You have the full distance to travel from in order to get to a city of refuge. But if you live between Hebron and Shechem, well, then you don't have anywhere near. It's half the distance exactly is going to be on average. So why is that the case? So and then so why is it so far from the edges and so close in the middle? So and Rashi explains, Mahaigisa, Demirchaki, Chevron, top line in Rashi on Yudam and Aleph, Chevron v'kadesh rechokot migvulei haaretz shnei revi'i. That when you take a look at each of the distances, right, from or it could be revi'is, but if you look at the distances combined, right, those two distances from the top city to the border and the bottom city to the border are each 1/4 of the length of the country. And so that's 2/4 of the country. So in the end, you have to travel, if you're at the very edge of the border, you have to travel 1/4 of the country to get to a city. And on the other hand, you have the middle cities where it's closer. If somebody does kill somebody by accident between Hebron and Shechem, and similarly between Shechem and Kadesh, you have the ability to go to whichever one is closer. And so as a result, you're going to have half the distance, as Stan highlighted. So, Amar Abaye, B'Shechem Nami, Shchichi Rotzchim. In Shechem, there was also more frequent murderers. And so as a result, in the center of the country, we needed more more cities of refuge. Exactly. Diksiv ukechake ish gedudim chever kohanim derech yiratzechu shechma. So the word shechma in this sentence does not is not actually intended to mean the towards Shem, but it rather with one will, that the sentence really means, and like gangs awaiting a man, a band of Kohanim murders on the road with one will, meaning that they're working together with one intention. But the bottom line is that we're now going to to note the fact that Shechma sounds like Shem and could be understood as towards Shem. And so that's how we'll understand the verse and show that, in fact, there are murderers in the area of Shem. And my Chever Kohanim, what does it mean, a band of Kohanim? That seems kind of strange to talk about Kohanim as murderers. So Amar Rebbe Lazar, Shahayu Mischabrim Laharog Nefashos, Kechoanim Halalo Shemischaberin Lechalok Trumos Beves Hagranos. No, the idea is that if you are looking at a group of people that are working together for a common purpose, that was the Kohanim who would gather in the granaries in order to get their share of the get their truma for portions in the tithes. And so as a result, just as the Kohanim would work together and they would go from one to the next in order to sort of get splits of the trumot, so too this band of robbers or thugs would be murdering and engaging in murder. Now, why they would make that comparison, so that that you have to look at the various Rishonim and Achronim who make various points on that. And so I'll leave that for the moment. Vesuleka, 1 second, you're telling me that there are only 6 cities of refuge? And so now the Gemara is going to note that there were other cities of refuge. Indeed, all of cities of the Leviim, which are 42, were also cities of refuge. So v'haksiv v'aleim titnu arba'im u'shtayim ir, that to them you have to add 42 cities, right? The pasuk says v'et harim asher titnu la'leviyim et sheish harei hamiklat asher titnu lanus shama harotzech v'aleim titnu arba'im, meaning that the Leviim have 48 cities, 42 that were not the main official one cities of refuge, and the 6 cities of refuge. So doesn't this suggest that the 42 cities were also on some level of cities of refuge? So Amar Abaye, halalu koltos bein ladas bein shalod ladas. The 6 cities of refuge are always going to work. Doesn't make a difference what your intention is in walking into them, they will protect you. Halalu ladas koltos, shalo ladas eina koltos. But the other cities, you need to go in there and effectively ask for protection, and in order to get the protection. If you don't affirmatively indicate that you're needing a protection, so then it doesn't necessarily give you protection. Okay, the Chevron miklat hayu, was Chevron really a city of refuge? V'haksiv vayitnu l'chalei ben es Chevron kasher diber Moshe, that Kalev was given the city of Hebron, and if Kalev was given the city of Hebron, then it can't be a city of the Leviim, and so as a result, it can't be a city of refuge. So Amar Abaye, Parvadaha, it was the Parvadaha that was given to him. So what is the Parvadaha? So take a look at Rashi, and Rashi says, Parvadaha, fourth narrow line in Rashi, from the top of the narrow lines on the right-hand side. Here's another daf that has Rashi on both sides. Kfarim v'chatzerim hasmuchosla. It's the villages and the yards that were near to it. V'nikraus al shema, and they were referred to as if it was part of Hebron. So that, not Nula Kalev, that was what was given to Kalev.
The Steisel says that Parvadaha is from a Persian root.
Does it give anything additional in terms of interpretation?
Yeah,
it translates it as surrounding areas.
The environs of a city.
The environs. Okay, yes, or environs. Okay, so the Etzedei, and so how do we know this? The Etzedei ha'ir v'es chatzereha, not nulachalev and Yefuneh. That we actually take a look, if we see in Yoshua, when Yoshua actually gave the area to Kalev, so then it says that the fields and the open areas were given to Kalev. All right, so similar question with respect to Kadesh. The Kadesh Ir Miklat Havai, was Kadesh really a city of refuge? So V'haksiv V'arei Mivtzar Here are the fortified cities: Hatzidim, Tsar, V'chamas, Rakas, V'chinares, and so on. And then in the next pasuk, or maybe it's two pasukim later, it says the Kedesh ve'edrei ve'ein chatzor. But we see Kedesh is a fortified city. V'tanya arim halalu ein osin otan lo tirin ketanim v'lo karakim gedolim. That we don't make these cities, meaning the cities of refuge, out of small villages or large cities. Ela ayarot beinuniot. You have to use medium-sized towns because we don't want to have the city be too big. Because if the city's too big, then we will see that there's a greater likelihood of the Goel Hadam, the Avenger, getting in and causing mayhem because even though he's not supposed to. So as a result, that we don't make cities. We're not going to choose such a city to make it a fortified city. So how can there be a fortified city that is a city of refuge? So Amar of Yosef, Tarti Kedesh Havai. There were two cities named Kedesh. So that may answer your question, but again, it doesn't maybe the answer, but it doesn't necessarily get us there. Amar of Ash, especially if the Kedesh that was you're referring to was a small Kedesh, so then it would make much more sense to say that that was the right Kedesh. All right, but Rav Ashi explains, Kagon Slikum, the Akra de Slikum. Like, you had a place called Slikum, and then it was Akra of Slikum. So they both had the same name, maybe because they're very close in proximity, but they are not the same city. And as a result, one is going to be the right one, and one is not going to be, and one is going to be the one that is fortified, and one is going to be the city of refuge. So
Stanislaus points out there were a lot of cities by that name in Hellenistic times, named for Alexander's general Seleucus.
Oh, the Seleucus name. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were referring to the Kaddish name at first.
Yeah.
So Gufa Arim Halalu Ein Osin Osan Lo Tirin V'Ketanim V'Lo Karakim Gedolim. So 1 second, let's take a look back at the brisa that we just cited. The fact that you're not supposed to make cities of refuge out of big cities or small cities, but Ella Ayarot Beinoniot, only cities that are medium sized. Ve'ein Moshivan Otan Ella B'Makom Mayim. And moreover, what else does it say in that brisa? We only set them up in places where there's water. V'im ein sham mayim, and if there isn't a natural water source there, mevi'in lahem mayim, you have to bring water there. V'ein moshivan otan ela b'makom shvakim, and we have to set it up in a place where there are marketplaces there, meaning there's got to be some kind of decent market, because the point is that we're going to see that you can't we don't want to force the convicted accidental killer who's going to exile to leave the city. As Rashi says, Shvakim, b'makom Shvakim, 1, 2, 3, 5 lines up in the narrow lines from the bottom of Rashi on the right-hand side of the page. Shim tze'u mizonos liknos. They have to be able to find food to eat, food to buy, excuse me. And then and we have to set them up in a place of uchlusin. B'makom uchlusin, Rashi says, now 4 lines up, sheyehu kfarim v'yishuv smuchim lahem. There have to be other villages and dwelling places near the city. Shelo yavou goalei hadam Merubim al ha'ir b'chayil. Because we need, now that we've said that it can't be too big a city, we need to be a little bit worried that maybe the Goel Hadam, the Avenger, will take, come up with his brothers and tribe mates and come and attack the city and try and get the guy out of the city. And so we have to be sure that the city has sufficient neighbors that they can band together to defend the city.
Policing.
Exactly. So nismatu uchlusian mosifin alayim. And if the population drops, so then you have to add to it. Nismatu diorehen mivian lehen kohanim leviim Yisrael. And if the number of people who live there, if the area around it drops in population, we have to add to them. And if the city itself drops in population, we need to bring Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim there. even though it's a city of Leviim, we're going to try and bring everybody because, again, we want it to be a full-fledged community. Ve'ein mokrin bahen lo kli zayin velo klei mitzuda divrei Rabbi Nechemia. Rabbi Nechemia says that we don't sell either weapons or hunting gear in these cities. The Chachamim matirim, but the Chachamim say that that's okay. Now, why do we prohibit that? Take a look at Kli Zayin, Rashi, last line in Rashi on the right-hand side. It'll then continue on the top. Shelo yikaneh goel adam, because we don't want the avenger to come into the city, buy weapons, sham zayin, that he'll then buy weapons there, vayarog, and he'll kill the guy. She'im yavei Kli Zayin, because coming in with weapons, b'mikomo yargishu bo, they'll meet him, they'll figure it out. Basically, like you wouldn't sell weapons inside an airport, right? Because that would defeat the purpose of screening as people come in. So too, the cities are going to screen the people who come in, and therefore we're going to prevent the Goel Adam from coming in with a weapon. And so as a result, if we allow sales of weapons, that would be bad, according to Rabbi Nechemia. The Chachamim allow it. The Shavin she'ein porson, but they agree she'ein porson betocha mitzudos, that you're not allowed to spread out weapons, spread out traps, excuse me. Ve'ein mafshilin letochan chavalin, and we don't spin ropes in those cities. And the reason is that kadesha lo tehei regel goel hadam mitzuyasham, because if you allow trapping and rope spinning, then it makes it, again, more likely that more people will be in that city. And so as a result, having more people come into the city will enable the Goel Adam to either enter unnoticed or enter with weapons. And so as a result, we may require the Goel Adam. Basically, this is the argument between those who say that we shouldn't sell weapons and those who say that we should have background checks. That if you sell weapons in the city, the rabbis could say, look, you have a background check. You check to see, is this guy a Goel Adam? If he's a Goel Adam, you won't sell him the weapon. And if he's not a Goel Adam, well, then you can sell him the weapon. So there's no reason not to sell weapons in the city. But on the other hand, if we allow trapping and the spinning of ropes, so then to the extent that those things require either cutting instruments for the ropes or the trapping instruments, we don't want the person to come in and trap the guy, and so as trap the convict, because he's protected in the city, but if he comes out of the city, he can be killed. So as a result, that's why we're not going to. Everybody agrees that we don't allow traps to be laid in the city, because we're worried that will result in the Goel Hadam trapping the person who accidentally killed his relative. Okay, so Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Mikra, what's the pasuk that says that we need all of these details? V'nas elachas min ha'arim ha'el b'chai, that you have to run to one of these cities and then you'll live. So Avidle, you have to make the city midi de dahavi lechiyusa, a city that will enable him to live. So Tana, Talmud shigala maglin rabo imo. So if you have a student, let me scroll. So if we have a student that gets exiled, this teacher goes to exile with him. Shenamar v'chai, because we have to have him live. Avid le midi de dehevi le chiyusa. We have to enable him to live. Rabbi Zeira mikan shelo yishna adam letalmid she'eno hagun. This teaches that you have to be careful about who you choose as your students. You shouldn't choose somebody who's not appropriate. Rabbi Yochanan, harav shigala maglin yeshiva soimo. If a teacher gets exiled, his entire yeshiva goes with him. So now we're going to ask a question on that statement. Aini, is that really true? V'ha'amar Rabbi Yochanan minayin l'divrei Torah she'hein kolt. And how do I know that the words of Torah themselves provide protection. And if the words of Torah themselves provide protection, why does the guy need to go to the city of refuge? He has protection through the words of Torah. Shneemar es beser bamidbar, that it says in the Torah, in Dvarim Perek Dalid Pasuk Mem Gimel, it says that Moshe set up the cities of refuge like Betzer in the wilderness. So Uksiv Basrei, and then immediately thereafter it says, it says Vizos HaTorah. This is not Vizos HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe V'nei Bnei Yisrael Pi Hashem B'Yad Moshe. This is Vizos HaTorah. What's the pasuk? Let's see if it has it here in the citation. So, V'zos HaTorah Asher. Oh no, this is V'zos HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe L'fnei Bnei Yisrael. This is the pasuk, but it's the next pasuk. This is the Torah that Moshe put before the children of Israel. So the point is that why is it connecting? How does it connect to the cities of refuge? It's saying that one of the cities of refuge, or one aspect of refuge, is the Torah. Yes. This is the Torah. So the point is that that's exactly the point. So again, our question is why does the Rebbe need to go to the city of refuge? So lo kasha hab'idna de asikba hab'idna de lo asikba. Well, you can only be engaged in learning Torah so many hours of the day. You can't be engaged in learning Torah at every second. And so as a result, when you're not engaged in learning Torah, you need the protection of the city of refuge. My colton, or we could say that what kind of protection does the Torah give? That is ordinary death protection. That's protection from, dying based on the angel of death. But when it comes to somebody who wants to affirmatively kill you, that maybe you don't get protection from that. So Kiyada Rav Chisda, like the story of Rav Chisda, Haba Yosef Garis Bevei Rab. Rav Chisda was studying and sitting and learning Torah. V'lo Haba Kayachol Shlicha de Malachi de Mosa Mikrav Ligabe. And so as a result, the agent of the angel of death was unable to approach him. Delo Havishasik Pume Megirsa, because he kept on learning every second. So Salak v'Yosef Arza de Beirab. So as a result, the agent of the angel of death sits down outside, and he sits down on a cedar nearby. Upaka Arza v'Shasik. And what happens? Because he sat on it, the cedar breaks and cracks. And so Rav Chisda looks up for just a moment, stops his learning, and that's how he was able to be killed. So Rebbe Tanchum Barchin Lilai. Why did Ruvain deserve to get the first city of refuge, which is Betzer? Because he was the one who first tried to rescue somebody, because he tried to rescue Yosef. Shenemar vayishma Reuven vayatzilehu miyadam. That Reuven heard what they were trying to do, and he saved them from their hands. This is when Yosef initially approached. So Darash Rabbi Simlai has another lesson. Ma diksiv az yavdil Moshe shalosh arim be'eber hayarden mizracha shamish. Why does it say that Moshe designated 3 cities towards the rising sun, meaning on the eastern side? So Amar Lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu LaMoshe, Hashem was saying to Moshe, Hazrach shemesh lerotzchim. You should cause the sun to shine for killers. And so that was the basis for him to do this decision. Ikadamri, or alternatively, it wasn't Hashem telling him to do it. It was Hashem giving him a yeshikoach. Amrlo, hizrachta shemesh lerotzchim. You have caused the sun to rise for the killers. So, and let's see that these are all good things. So take a look. Rashi, second narrow line on the left-hand side of the page. Hazarach shemesh lerotzchim la'achin lahem. You should to prepare for them chayutam, so that they can live. Kigon hanach mili, like the things that we said above. Or hazrachta shemesh lerotzchim, that the sun rose for the murderers. B'havdalazu, through this separation. Vayafeh asita, and you did well by doing this. Hashem is telling him. So that is again, another lesson that we have from these psukim associated with the cities of refuge. So now we have another drasha from Rabbi Simlai, a second one. No, this is the first from Rabbi Simlai. Darish Rabbi Simai, excuse me. Darish Rabbi Simai. My dixiv oev kesef lo yis. No, this is the second. I'm sorry. Oh, 1 second. I just now see that this says Simai and not Simlai. I wrote there's a typo on the screen, so I have to change that. So Darish Rabbi Simai. My dixiv oev kesef lo yisba kesef umi ohev v'hamon lo tvua. So the pasuk is a pasuk in Kohelet, Parakeh, pasuk tet, that one who loves silver is not going to be satisfied with silver, and whoever loves a lot will have no produce. So what exactly does that mean? So, and who is it referring to? So oev kesef, lo yispa kesef, that somebody who loves silver is not going to be satisfied with silver. So zem Moshe Rabbeinu, this refers to Moshe. Shahaya yodea she'ein shlosh arim shebe'ever yardin koltos ad shelo nivcharu shalosh be'eretz Canaan. So Moshe knew that what he was doing was not going to take effect until the 3 cities in the land of Canaan were set up. V'amar, and yet he says, mitzvah shabal yadi akaimena. I'm going to take advantage of the mitzvah that comes to my hand, even though he wasn't going to be able to fulfill it. So even though he wanted silver, and he wasn't going to be able to get the silver because the silver was on some level a sense of the completion of the job, and that he wasn't going to be able to do. So umi ohev bahamon lo tvua. And what about the rest of that pasuk? What somebody who loves a lot, loves having a lot, he is not going to have any produce. Lamina el lamed bahamon. So this is teaching us who is it that's appropriate to teach in public. So mi ohev behamon, meaning who is, there's a rereading it, the sentence to say who is sort of beloved in public as a teacher of Torah. Mi shekol tvua shalo, not lo, although it's lamed aleph, we can understand it as lo lamed vav. And so as a result, that who is it that is proper to teach Torah in public? That is somebody who has the produce, that all the produce, meaning, as Rashi says, shekol tvua shalo, shibaki b'mikra, b'mishnah, b'hilchos, b'halachos, b'agados, that the person knows well the Torah, the Mishnah, the laws, and the Agadot and the stories. So v'hainu de'amar Rabbi Elazar, and this is consistent with what Rabbi Elazar says. My diksiv mi melel v'ruas Hashem yashmiya kol tehilaso. Who's going to utter the mighty acts of Hashem? Who's going to declare all of His praise? This is from Tehillim Kuf Vav. I think it's from Hallel. We say it in Hallel. Lamina l'malel gvuras Hashem. Who is it appropriate to utter these words of of what Hashem does in public? Meaning, who is it that's going to be good to teach Torah publicly? So it's somebody who is able to say all of his praise, meaning he knows all the Torah, the halachot, etc. The Rabbanan, the Isema, Rabba Barmari Amar, and either the rabbis or Rabba Barmari say, Mi ohev bahamon lo tvua. I'm sorry, mi ohev bahamon lo tvua. That somebody who loves a lot, to him they have produce. What is that referring to? Kol ha'ohev bahamon lo tvua. Somebody who loves a lot he's going to get Torah, meaning who Yavu Bey Rabbanan. I'm sorry. Let's take a look at Rashi. Rashi says Rabbanan v'isema Ramari Amar Amre Mi Ohev Bahamon HaOev Talmud Chacham. Rashi here adds the abbreviation for a Talmud Chacham, Lo Tua. So it's whoever loves a Talmud Chacham, so then he will get a lot of produce. So if you support Talmidei Chachamim, so then HaTorah Mechazeres Alav. Rashi continues, the Torah is going to return to him. And how will it do it? Va'al Zaro, and to his children. As we say elsewhere in Shas, and the citation is to Shabbos Daf Kuf Gimel Amabet. Haiman derachim Rabbanan, somebody who loves rabbis, Havyan lay Banin Rabbanan, then he will have as children rabbis. Okay, and upon hearing this, Yavu be Rabbanan Einahu berabba bre de Rabba. So as a result, they looked at Rav, the son of Rabba, because he was the son of another Talmud Chacham, and so that was highlighting the nature of this lesson. Okay, so Siman Ashi Lilmod Ravina Lilamed. So Rav Ashi Amar Kol Ha'oev Lilma Bahamon Lo Tfua. That again, all based on this verse, that anybody who loves to learn in a group, that's the person who is going to have success in their learning. Meaning, learning by yourself is not going to be as successful. What does it mean that the sword is to the individuals and they'll become fools? A sword is on the necks of those who don't like the Talmidei Chachamim, sheyoshvim ba'oskim b'Torah ba'avad, because they're sitting and trying to learn on their own without the assistance of others. Below od elashamitapshin, it actually goes so far. It's not just that it's bad, but you make yourself foolish. Ksiv hacha v'noalu, they'll become fools. Uksiv hasam asher noalnu, because we acted foolishly, and that pasuk is in Bamidbar, Parak Yud Bet, Pasuk Yud Aleph. The lo od, ela shechot in, they're actually sinners. Shene'amar ba'asher chatanu, because they've sinned. V'yibayzema mehacha. Or you can say it's a different source, no alu sarei tzoan, that the officers of tzoan have become fools. This is from Pasuk in Yeshaya. Okay, so Ravina Amar, Ravina again. So we were now giving various interpretations of this pasuk in Kohelet. So we had one from Rav Ashi that you shouldn't learn by yourself, and now Ravina says, "Kol ha'oiv lulamed b'hamon lo tfuah." Whoever loves to teach the public, that's who's going to be granted good learning, more produce. V'hainu da'amar Rebbe. This is what Rebbe said. Harbe Torah lamadti mirebosai. I learned a lot of Torah from my teachers. Umechavayra yoter mehen, and I learned even more from my colleagues, from my friends, than I learned from my teachers. Umetalmidim yoter mikulan, and I learned the most from my students. And so, as a result, by teaching a lot of students, that's how you're going to get to know the material really well. So that is the teaching that Ravina says. So Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, my diksiv omdos hayu ragleinu bisharayach Yerushalayim. So that we stood with our feet in the gates of Yerushalayim. Break that pasuk down. What it means is the following: Mi garam l'ragleinu sheyamdu b'milchama. What enables us to remain standing in battle? Sha'arei Yerushalayim, the gates of Yerushalayim. Shahayu oskim b'Torah, meaning that the people who are regularly in Yerushalayim studying Torah, that's what's going to enable us to be successful in battle. From Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, another quote of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, my diksiv shir amalos David samachti be'omrim li beis Hashem nelech. This is from the Tehillim Kuf Chaf Bet, from the series of 15 Shir Amaloses, songs of ascent. So it again means sing a song of ascent to David. I rejoice when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of Hashem." So that's referring to the following: Amar David Lifnei Hakadosh Baruch Hu. David says to Hashem, "Ribono Shalom, God, Shamati b'nei Adam shahayu omrim." I hear people say, "Masai yemud zaken zeh." When is this old guy, namely himself, going to die? V'yavo Shlomo b'no v'yivne beis habechira, because we're all waiting for his son Shlomo to come and he'll build the Beit Hamikdash. V'naleh regel, and we'll be able to go to the Beit Hamikdash for the holidays. V'samachti, and I was happy about that, David HaMelech says. So David HaMelech, sort of reflecting on his own death, Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says back to David, Ki tov yom b'chatzeirecha me'ala. Although it's not from the same parak in Tehillim, this is parak Pei Dalid in Tehillim, for a day in your courtyards is better than 1,000. So although that might have been ordinarily understood to mean a day in God's courtyard, on some level it's referring to David that David's day in God's courtyard is better than 1,000, better than 1,000. Tovli yom echad she'ata osek b'Torah lefanai. One day of you, David, learning Torah in front of me is better than me elef olot she'osit Shlomo bincha lahakriv lefanai al gabi hamizbech. Better than 1,000 burnt offerings. And this we see often in Tanakh, that in fact that Hashem, as much as Hashem appreciates our offerings, our sacrifices, but more than that is Hashem appreciates us learning Torah and performing the mitzvot. So now the next the Mishnah noted that we need to prepare roads between the cities of refuge. So Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, as we turn to Yud Amabet, Miklat Hayakosov al Parashat Drachim. The word refuge was written so you would know which direction to go at every crossroads. Kadeshi Yakir Harotzeach v'Yifnei Lasham, so that the killer would know where to go and he'd be able to turn to the right direction. Amarov Kahana Maikra Tachin Lecha Haderech. It says that you have to prepare the way for yourself. This is a pasuk in Dvarim Parak Yud Tet pasuk Gimel. Asay lecha hachana laderech. You have to make the way clear so that you can be prepared to go if you need to. Rav Chama bar Chanina pasuk la piska lahai parsha samihacha. So when Rav Chama bar Chanina would begin talking about the rules of the cities of exile, he would begin with the following. Tov yashar Hashem al kain yorech hata'im badarach. That it's good and upright is Hashem. This is a pasuk in Tehillim Perek Kaf Hey pasuk Chet. That good and upright is Hashem. Therefore, He guides sinners on the way. So the point is that we just saw that when it comes to the cities of exile, cities of refuge, you need to set up directions. Hashem is giving directions to sinners. So if Hashem gives direction to sinners, then certainly He gives them to the righteous. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish pasuk la piska lahai parshas mihacha. He would begin with the following: V'asher lo tzadava Elokim ina liyado. That, but if he did not lie in wait, but God caused it to come to his hand. So again, this murderer who killed somebody by accident didn't do it on purpose. So what is that really telling us? Kasher Yomar Mashal Hakadmoni Mirishoim Yetze Resha. That this is a pasuk. This is a pasuk in Shmuel. Shmuel Aleph pasuk Kavdalid pasuk Perak Kavdalid pasuk Yudalid. That it says, as the proverb of the ancient one says, from the wicked comes forth wickedness. So what's a pasuk talking about? Vishnei b'nei Adam. You have two people. Shahargu es nefesh, who each killed somebody. Echad harag b'shokeg, ve'echad harag b'mezid, one killed on purpose, one killed by accident. Lezeh ein edim, v'lezeh ein edim. But neither of them have witnesses. So as a result, there's no punishment. Nothing happens to either of them. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu mazminin lefundak echad. Hashem brings them all to one inn. Zeh shaharag b'mezid, yoshev tachas hasulam. The one who killed on purpose sits underneath the ladder. And the one who killed accidentally is going down the ladder. And he falls and kills the murderer. So you end up with the murderer killed. And as a result, now the person who had killed accidentally is going to be able to get the proper punishment for an accidental killing, namely going into galus. So Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna, but Amri La, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rabbi Elazar. So it was either Rabba bar Rav Huna who said in the name of Rav Huna, or it was Rav Huna himself who said in the name of Rabbi Elazar. Mina Torah umina Neviim umina Ksuvim. We see that from all three, Torah, from Neviim, from prophets, and Ksuvim and the writings, B'derech she'adam rotza leilech ba molichan ota. That when in a way that a person wants to go, that's how he is led. Mina Torah, Diksiv, because we have this story of Bilam. Lo telechimahem. God says, don't go with them. But it's clear that Bilam wants to go with them. So as a result, Uksiv kum lechitam. So as a result, Hashem effectively almost looks like Hashem has changed his mind. But really, it's Hashem is saying, listen, for your sake, you should not go with them. It will not be good for you. But instead, Bilam really wants to go. So then God says, okay, go ahead. You'll see what happens. Mina Neviim. and then from the prophets, Tiksiv, Ani Hashem Elokecha milamedcha lahoil. I am Hashem, your God, who teaches you for your benefit. Mid madrichucha b'derech telech, who leads you in the path you will go. Meaning, although Hashem tells you how to go, in the end, he leads you in the path that you actually choose to take. As Rashi says, b'derech telech, b'derech asher tivchar lelech. Then the way that you choose to go, that's how God's going to end up taking you. But really, you need to listen to Hashem. Hashem will initially provide you direction, but then it's up to you to decide what you do with it. Minaksuvim, and we get this also in the Ksuvim of Tanakh. Diksiv, im leleitzim hu yalitz. If one goes to the scoffers and joins the scoffers, well, then he's going to scoff. So, v'la'anavim yitain chen. But if he goes to those who are humble, well, then he's going to get grace. Meaning that the way you decide to go is going to influence how you end up behaving. So true. I think we all sort of recognize this in our lives. Amar Rav Huna rotzeach shegal li'ir miklat. So we're sending the killer is on his way to the Ir Miklat, and the Goel Adam, the avenger, finds him and kills him. V'harago putter. He is exempt. The avenger is exempt. Kasavar. That's because Rav Huna thinks the lo ein mishpat mavis, that in the pasuk that says this is the pasuk says this is Dvarim Parak Yutet pasuk vav. Pen Yerdof Hagoel Adam Acharei Rotzeach, lest the avenger chase it after the killer. Ki Yacham Levavo, because his heart will become enraged. V'hisigo, and he'll get over him. He'll catch up to him. Ki Yirbeh Haderech, because it's a far way. V'hiko Nefesh, and he'll kill him. V'lo ein mishpat mavis, and he has no death penalty. Now the question is, who is that referring to? Ki lo sonehu lo mitmol shulshom, because he didn't hate him yesterday or the day before. So the question is who is this lo ein mishpat mavis all about? So according to Rav Huna, the Goel Adam hu diksiv, the person who doesn't get the death penalty is the person who is the avenger. Meisvei, but I'll ask you a question. V'lo ein mishpat mavis. We have a brisa that specifically says that who is lo ein mishpat mavis referring to? V'rotzeach hakasam medaber. It's talking about the original killer. Ata omer v'rotzeach o einu ela b'goel adam. Maybe you can say it means the avenger. No, kishahu omer, when the pasuk says v'hu lo sonei lo mitmol shilshom, that he didn't hate him yesterday or the day before. Havei omer kirotzeach hakasam medaber. That's referring to the killer, not to the avenger, right? The avenger, depending on how many days he's been killed, the avenger pretty much hates the guy. So then maybe it's referring to the killer. So who the Amar Kahaitana? No, Rav Huna agrees that you're right that disagrees with Rav Huna, but Rav Huna has another Tana on whom he can rely. The Tanya, the lo ein mishpat mavis, same words, same pasuk, the goel hadam hakazam medaber, and this brisa says that it's the redeemer, it's the avenger that it's referring to. Maybe it really means the killer himself. No, kishahu omer ki lo sonehu lo mitmol shilshom harei rotzeach amor. When it talks about that he didn't hate him the day before or today, yesterday or the day before, then it was that's referring to the killer. And so as a result, this must be referring to somebody else. Hamani Mekayim v'lo ein mishpat mavis. So what does it mean that it says that that there's no death penalty upon him? The Goel Hadam HaKasav Medaber. It's referring to the avenger. The avenger doesn't have it. But again, the other read that reads it as referring to the killer is saying that the killer doesn't get isn't killed because he killed by accident. Yeah. And so as a result, because the killer isn't killed, that means that if the Goel Hadam kills the guy, the avenger would be killed. So that's the machlokus between these two brises. Rav Huna says that the avenger who kills the killer is not going to be sentenced to death, whereas the brisa that we originally challenged Rav Huna with would say that the killer of the avenger who kills the killer will be sentenced to death. Okay, so Tanan. So we learned in our Mishnah, Mosrin lo shnei talmidei chachamim. We set up. So now we're going to try and prove one way or the other. We said in our Mishnah that we have to set up two Torah scholars, Shema Yargenu B'derech, because we're worried that the avenger is going to kill him. The dabru alav, and they should speak to him. So my lav de masrube, doesn't it mean that they're warning him the katal, and it's because if he kills the guy bar katalahu, he's going to be liable to the death penalty. So doesn't it show that the first brisa is right and Rav Huna is wrong, and that in fact the killing the killer will cause the avenger to be subject to the death penalty? No, that's not the case. Rather, we have a brisa that explains what does it mean when it says that the two Torah scholars are supposed to speak to him. They speak to him words that are suited to him. And they say to him, don't act like a murderer. The guy who killed your relative killed him by accident. Rabbi Meir Omer, and Rabbi Meir says, he should speak. The killer can speak for himself. Again, dvar here doesn't really mean the word of the killer, but rather the matter and how we deal with the killer. But Rabbi Meir is sort of learning expositionally how we understand dvar as meaning that the killer himself should speak. So Amru lo, but the rabbi said to him, Harbi shlichos osa. There are lots of things that are better done by an agent. As Rashi points out, dvarim she'ena nasim al yedei adam. There are things that a person can't do himself, nasimu miskabelim al yedei harbe shluchim, that can be done through a lot of agents. Meaning, the bottom line is that sometimes you're not your best advocate. That's true in court. As we say, a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. And it's true in this context as well. When you're trying to calm down somebody who's angry at you, it's better to use somebody else. So Amar Mar Bishkaga Bamasa Liyado. So the people are going to say, as we said in this price, of the people, the Talmidei Chachamim are going to tell the avenger that, listen, this guy did it by accident. Well, Pshita, of course he did it by accident. To even Mazid Bar Golosu, if he had done it intentionally, he would be subject to exile. So yes, in fact, you're right that I'm sorry. Excuse me, I read that wrong. Because if he had done it intentionally, would he actually go to exile? And so the Gemara answers, yes, there is a situation where an intentional murderer goes to exile. As we saw, Bahatanya, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer, B'tchila, and Rashi explains B'tchila as meaning as soon as anything happens, Echad Shogeg ve'echad Mezid, whether you killed intentionally or unintentionally, Makdimin la'arei miklat, you run to the city of refuge, Ubeist in Shulchan Uvino Tamisham, and the court will get you from there. Mishin is Chayab Misa Haraguhu, and if you're liable for the death penalty, so you'll get killed. Shenemar v'shalchu zeknei hiro v'lakuo so misham v'nasnuo so b'yad goel adam v'meis, and the person's going to get killed. Mishalon is chayav, and if you're not subject to the death penalty, patarua, you'll be exonerated. Shenemar v'tzilo ha'eda es harotzech miyad goel adam, that they'll exonerate him from the redeemer of the blood. Mishin is chayav galus, one who is subject to galus, machazirino solim komo, and they'll return him back to the city of refuge. Shenemar v'heshivo oso ha'eda el ir miklato asher nashama, they'll return him to the city where he fled. Rabbi Omer, me'atzman hein golin. It wasn't a sort of a rule that they should go into galus, but rather they went into galus on their own. Why? They thought originally people would think that the cities of refuge would help even intentional killers. And they didn't understand that in fact only accidental killers get protected, intentional killers do not. So final rule. So final rule, Amar Rabbi Lazar, Ir Sheruba Rotzchim, a city that has majority of killers, Eino Koletas. If you have so many killers in the city of refuge that it's the majority, well, then it will not provide refuge. Why? That the killer needs to speak in the ears of the elders of the city. As dvarav, and he needs to tell his matter to them. Well, v'lo shehushvu divrehen lidvarav. But if the majority of the city is killers, well, then the elders of the city, it is their matter just as it is his matter. And so as a result, therefore, such a city will no longer provide protection. So we have another, the Gemara is now going to tell us another teaching of Rabbi Lazar, but for that teaching and for the debate about that teaching, which has several different contexts, you'll need to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yes.
Yasha Koch, time for tomorrow?
An hour before Mincha. Each day, tomorrow and Sunday, an hour before Mincha. I don't know what time that is, but that will be when we'll meet in the lobby. Approximately 6:15 is my six, something like six, sometime.
I'll look
between
on the
6 and
calendar.
6:15. But if you need the time, I'll see if I can post it into the WhatsApp group. Have a wonderful, wonderful Yontif and Shabbos, and look forward to continuing our learning together.
Thank you.